In the next scene, we see that the protagonist agreed with Taekyung that they should proceed with the schedule of informing their families about the couple's separation. However, before telling them, Yeon-do will first find a place to move into. To her surprise, the doctor agreed without hesitation and even gave her the phone number and address of the real estate agency that was helping him find a residence at that time. Meanwhile, Se-jin begins to panic even more because when she went to tell Madam Eun about what she discovered about the protagonist's ex-boyfriend, the lady told her secretary to let it go, and at that moment, Se-jin realized that even her partner was abandoning her. Without Madam Eun, the secretary might not achieve her goal, so in a desperate act, Se-jin calls the lady old and questions whether she remembers the day she expelled her family from the annex years ago, as if they were objects and not people with emotions. Madam Eun doesn't understand what Se-jin is saying and is even shocked by the secretary's change in behavior. But as the woman is leaving the residence, we see the backstory of this misunderstanding. Rewinding in time, Se-jin lived in the annex with her family, and on a certain day, the young woman caught the lady arguing with her mother, who was on her knees at Madam Eun's feet, begging her not to expel them. The lady made this decision after finding something belonging to Se-jin in the boys' room. At that time, Taekyung and Chun Myung shared the same room because the family was in the annex. Thinking that the young woman was offering herself to her beloved grandson, obviously Chun Myung, Madam Eun proceeded to throw them out, especially after she developed slight suspicions that Taekyung might be the person she was involved with. That's when Se-jin's mother started blaming the girl's father for their situation, as the private school wasn't bringing much return. The woman created a rift between daughter and father, which lingers to this day, as we can see. And do you remember those things Se-jin said when she was young to Taekyung? In reality, she was angry at the boy's family and ended up taking it out on him. Se-jin liked Taekyung a lot, but the anger blinded her so much that today she has become a woman who cannot be trusted. Returning to the present day, as Se-jin is leaving through the gate, she sees the doctor also heading to work, and at that moment, she warns him not to provoke her because she is still deciding what to do. Of course, Taekyung didn't understand what the secretary meant, but Chon-sik also heard Se-jin's threat. Meanwhile, at Bongnim's house, Daesang comments to Dongwook that he changed his mind about Soo-jayam not being part of the company where Yoo Myung works because the young woman seems to like the girl a lot and noticed some details that even they might not see. This conversation between the two results in Dongwook going to Yoo Myung's company and signing a contract with her. However, the man warns her not to do anything crazy, and during the discussion about the paperwork with her boss, Dongwook tells the story of Soo-jayam's mother, who abandoned her at a young age. Moving on to Chun Myung, we see that his meeting with Junha to discuss business seems to have gone very well, and when the man answered a call from Se-jin, Junha commented that he had heard about her. Back to our beloved protagonist, Yeon-do begins her search for a place to live. However, she didn't expect to find Taekyung at the real estate agency, and since the man decided to accompany her on the house visits, he criticized every place. As a result, the protagonist ended up dismissing the realtor and, of course, argued with Taekyung about his attitude. But later, while sharing a meal, Taekyung asks her to also accept how he feels because he will do the same and invites her to go on a date with him that night. Giving it a chance, Yeon-do ends up accepting. Meanwhile, Junha finally answered one of the many calls Se-jin was making, and when she mentioned having something important to discuss with him about Yeon-do, the two arranged a meeting. Switching to Ji Myung, we see that the proposal she prepared for a meeting with the president and shareholders was very well received, especially with encouragement from Sang-hoon. However, during the process, Ji Myung began experiencing severe cramps, and noticing that the woman wasn't well, Sang-hoon put her in his car and took her to her husband's clinic. However, before getting out, Ji Myung said she didn't want to be examined there and asked him to take her somewhere else. But during the brief time they remained parked, Dr. Cha saw them together, and his suspicions that something was happening between the two increased. Continuing with the pair inside the vehicle, Sang-hoon tries to calm her down, saying that it won't happen like last time when the woman ended up spontaneously losing the baby she was carrying, which left her very distraught at the time. Hearing these words, we viewers can conclude that Ji Myung didn't actually have an abortion as Hyun-woo accused her, but we also can't blame Dr. Cha. After all, the woman isn't very honest with him. In the next scene, we see Chun Myung taking his wife out for a meal, and he made a very important decision so that the couple can have a child. Since the difficulty in conceiving is on the man's side, Chun Myung mentioned that they should find a donor so that Soo-jong can carry a baby, and as it is something very unexpected, the woman is shocked and decides to leave. Returning to Ji Myung, at another clinic, she ensures that everything is fine with her baby, and after they leave the place, she thanks Sang-hoon for his help, both now and back then. Switching to Junha's meeting with Se-jin, we see that the woman just wanted to confirm if the baby wasn't his, but even though the man repeatedly denied being the father, the secretary still didn't believe him. Junha was surprised to learn that Yeon-do and Tae-kyung are still together, and with nothing more to discuss, Se-jin leaves. Meanwhile, the protagonist decided to meet with that realtor without the doctor knowing and signed a contract with her 2 months in advance, but asked the woman to keep it a secret. Yeon-do also mentioned that Tae-kyung is not her husband. Later, when the protagonist arrives home, we see that she gets emotional upon hearing her mother-in-law talking about how excited she is to meet Real, and seeing someone so dear excited to see a grandchild that isn't actually hers makes Yeon-do start crying and apologizing to In-ok, who is obviously surprised and confused. In the next scene, we see Jang-ho retrieving some things from his old residence, and while talking to his ex-wife, the man finally realizes that Yeon-do is Tae-kyung's current wife and that his daughter lied to everyone, claiming she was the one who saved the woman. Switching to Ji Myung, we see her discussing with Hyun-woo before bed about what happened earlier and calming him down by saying the baby is fine. But for the first time, the woman notices that the man seems to have finally given up on maintaining a relationship with her. And downstairs, Chonsik checks with Tae-kyung to see if Se-jin isn't up to something because of the conversation he overheard between them earlier, but the doctor tells his stepfather not to worry, everything is fine. Later, in a conversation with his wife, Chonsik comments that he is happy that Tae-kyung now has someone to share his life with and confesses that he knows it's his fault Tae-kyung was treated that way all this time by his family. Thus, he apologizes to In-ok for bringing this pain to her and their son. The couple's conversation is interrupted when someone delivers a letter to the man late at night. Upon opening it, it's a warning written with letters cut from a magazine, advising the president to be careful with Se-jin. Moving on to our young couple's date, we see Tae-kyung takes the protagonist to a car camping site, where he asks if they can try to start a new relationship that night. Yeon-do goes along with it, and during the date, she realizes that she also likes the doctor. However, she is equally afraid of getting hurt again, especially now that she is carrying a child. Nevertheless, the protagonist musters up the courage and decides by the end of the night to propose to Tae-kyung that they spend the last months of the contract as a real married couple, allowing them to test their feelings. So, my dear viewers, we will finally see these two as a real couple. The next day, the Gong family continues to have conflicts. The protagonist doesn't like the way Ji Myung treats her mother-in-law, leading to a physical altercation between Yeon-do and her sister-in-law, with the pregnant women nearly pulling each other's hair out, only to be separated by their husbands. Once things calm down, Ji Myung reassures Hyun-woo about her and Sang-hoo, explaining that they are nothing more than friends. Meanwhile, influenced by the confident Yeon-do, In-ok also stands up to Madam Moon when the lady starts speaking ill of the protagonist during a meal, and later, she realizes how liberating it is. Focusing now on Chonsik, he realizes how bad a person Se-jin is when his younger daughter comments that Madam Moon said the secretary hasn't given up on Tae-kyung, and now Chonsik is finally opening his eyes to the woman. Thus, the man gives Se-jin a vote of confidence and asks if there's anything he should know. However, the secretary swears she is completely transparent with the president, and now, what will the man do? Well, surprises keep coming for the secretary because Junha appears at the company for a meeting with Chansik, and Sejin feels her world crumbling once again. Later, she meets with Junha and asks if he was the one who sent that anonymous letter to Chansik. At this moment, we find out that apparently, it wasn't the man, which surprised me too. I have a theory that it might have been her father. What do you think? Continuing, Junha questions why Sejin doubts that Yeondu's baby is Taekyung's, and the woman mentions the superficial marriage he offered her, which might be the same proposal the doctor made to the protagonist, helping her avoid being a single mother. Sejin's theory intrigued Junha, and now he seems willing to find out if the baby is his. Meanwhile, at Bongnim's establishment, the lady caught Woo-hee about to steal money from the register, so she was going to call the woman for a talk when Dae-sang appeared and said he would handle it. It turns out that Woo-hee was almost taking this action because of a debt in her name at a hospital that charges her daily, and knowing that the woman is not a bad person, Dae-sang says it's okay when she tells him the truth. The man also adds an important question for Woo-hee, asking if she wants to be his girlfriend so he can take care of her and her child, but Woo-hee said she would give him an answer. Later, we see that Jang Ho and Bongnim are getting closer. Could we have another new couple? The next day, Hyun Woo and Taekyung plan to take their wives to a surprise yoga class to help them make peace, but the opposite happened. In fact, the two started competing against each other. Then, Dr. Cha was on his way to work when he passed by that pharmacy, where he has a friendship with the owner and her son, and noticed some commotion around it. It turned out that there was a drunk man inside causing trouble, so the man helped the owner by immobilizing the individual. Meanwhile, at Jang Ho's school, Bongnim and Matamoon are competing for the student council presidency. In the next scene, we see Taekyung returning to his office only to find Junha waiting for him. The man is there to verify if what Sejin said was true. However, the doctor explained that he is not a fool who would accept and raise someone else's baby. In fact, he was quite convincing in his words, and Junha left fuming with anger because Taekyung made it clear that he doesn't want the man near his wife and certainly not looking for him again about a matter that is already resolved. Later, we see Jang Ho having an honest conversation with Bongnim, where he confesses to writing a letter to his daughter's boss, telling the man not to trust her. Jang Ho explains that he did this because he can no longer stand seeing Sejin hurting and lying to people just to get what she wants. He feels like a completely incompetent father for having raised her this way and blames himself for her becoming this person. Bongnim is moved along with Jang Ho and advises him to pray for her because it's the only thing he can do at this moment to help her. The next day, since Yeondu didn't agree to assist in her election for school presidency, Matamoon resorted to donating designer clothes to the students, and in this regard, Bongnim knows she can't compete. But this act qualifies as something that disqualifies Matamoon from the elections, and using this to her advantage, Bongnim starts fighting to prevent the lady from competing further. Jang Ho was indeed doing the right thing by proceeding with the request. However, Yeondu appeared at the location to commit to helping Matamoon win fairly, and at that moment, Bongnim discovered that the protagonist is Matamoon's tutor. What upset Bongnim the most wasn't even the fact that her daughter returned to work, but rather that she would help her competitor. Meanwhile, Junha requested that Sejin be his secretary while he works with the Gong company, and later, we see the man promise that if she does her job right, he will reward her with something that will destroy Taekyung. Later, at the Gong family home, Sujong wanted to donate something she had to Yeondu, but only with the intention of feeling superior. The protagonist recognized her intentions and rejected the false kindness, saying she doesn't want her child to grow up seeing people doing that to each other, which obviously offended Sujong. Thinking that Matamoon would side with her, Sujong took the problem to the lady. However, to everyone's surprise, Matamoon told Sujong to stop bothering the pregnant women in the house, thus defending Yeondu. In the next scene, we switch to Dae-sang, who is upset that Woo-hee disappeared from work without any notice, and he is also waiting for her answer to that question. The next day, Yumayung meets the rest of Dongwook's family and spends some hours with Sujayam. Meanwhile, Yeondu makes peace with Sujong and shares the pain of also having lost a baby. Later, Taekyung and the protagonist go to the family company for lunch with the president. Unfortunately, the two end up running into Junha. There isn't any confrontation, but nonetheless, Yeondu needs a few minutes in the bathroom to compose herself. While waiting, Taekyung takes the opportunity to ask Sejin what Junha was doing in the building, and at that moment, he discovers that the man is working with his stepfather. Switching to lunch with the president, the man receives the confirmation he needed to verify that Sejin continues to cross the line with the couple. Thus, Chonsik asks that from now on, the two inform him when something like this happens again. And an unexpected invitation arrives in the middle of the meal. Chonsik and Taekyung are invited to a golf match with Junha the next day. So, to avoid any suspicion from the president about the secret they are keeping, the doctor says he will attend. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like and share it to help me out. Until next time.